Right, guys, what I'm going to do is we're going to have a little reflection first of all. Okay, so I'm going to pop you into breakout groups soon. There are a mixture of people amongst us who attended the Grow Model workshop in 2019. If you ask someone, can you just pop your hand up if you did go to the coach and to the referee coach development workshop last year? Just keep it up for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, yep, no, it's about half, so that's good. That's a good mixture. What I'm going to do, guys, is going to pop you into that group. Can the people who are at those road shows to lead the conversation around the actual workshop itself? So, what do you remember about the workshop? Also, but for everyone else as well, and this will be pretty much everyone here, you've all had some sort of, most people have had some experience with the use of the Grow model. Not everyone, but most people would have. So in your mind right now, try and think of what is, if you remember what Grow stands for, and this is where you can actually jot it down on your paper. So what the G, the R, the O, and the W stand for, and maybe some thoughts around what each of those ones mean. But yeah, so if you remember what it stands for, you're going to have a little chat about this in your groups. Talk about the ones which you remember the most of, what you remember about each component of Grow, and also how it worked last season, what worked well for you. And we've got different perspectives here. We've got referee perspectives, we've got referee coach perspectives, so that will work quite well. And we've also got perspectives of people who have not been involved in it too. Also think about some of the challenging things, okay? So if you want to make any notes of this slide right now, you can. Some of the key things you're talking about, I'll go one more time. What do you remember? Do you remember what Grow stands for? If you can't remember all of it, what do you recall? Think about last year, what worked well? What did you find challenging? And if you attended the roadshow, what stood out for you? What do you remember? What were some of the key things you remember from that roadshow, from that workshop last year? Cool. Welcome back, everyone. I've dipped in and out of each room and it sounded like there was some good discussion going on. So hopefully that worked well for everyone. Again, it was just a quick tune in really to Grow, what it is and how it's been going for us so far. What I'll do, guys, is I'm just going to create a whiteboard and add a few notes to it as we go through. So if someone else has already shared something that you were going to share as well, then you can obviously you don't need to share that as well. I mean, I'm sure that you guys talked about it, but probably don't need to go over it again multiple times. So if we can maybe get one person from each group, maybe break the first breakout room. I don't know if I labeled you guys, but breakout room 1, who is a speaker from that room?
Yeah, Cam, that was me. So there was Pat, Tiana, Jono, Sean, Steve Wheeler, and Adam Wilkinson in breakout room 1.
Brilliant, thank you.
So 6 of us, 4 of us knew all of the Grow model, knew the definitions, and the other 2 knew bits of it. The standouts were that, there's lots of a whole heap of standouts of worked wells, and only a couple of challenges. Did you want me to keep going? I can.
Perhaps first of all, what are our G, R, O, and W?
Oh, sorry. Goals, realities, options, and way forward.
Cool. Sweet. And way forward. Cool. Okay. What were there any, I guess, standouts or challenges that you wanted to highlight? Maybe a couple of each, and then I can go to another group and get some of these.
Okay. So the standout was it was revolutionary.
Okay.
And I suppose it worked well. It was exceptional for committed refs, and it doesn't work at all for uncommitted refs.
Cool.
Yep, those are the big ones for us.
Sweet. Okay, fantastic. Okay, someone from Group 2. Do you guys have anything that you'd like to expand upon, or any pros and cons that you'd like to add, or maybe something from last year's workshop that stood out?
I could talk for Group 2, I suppose. So I think just from us, we just got more. There was not as many of us had used it, so we kind of had a bit of a background from Craig about what it was. I think in terms of areas for improvement, we thought maybe a bit more training and rollouts for consistency. So just like Pat said, it was good for those committed refs, not as good for those less committed, or probably less committed is, okay, I suppose it's probably a fair way of saying it, but I just guess people that didn't know about it. So there was no, probably, and more training for some coaches as well who weren't onto it, as well as the consistency. So there was a discussion about those, the coaching points, whether some referee coaches thought that you couldn't use that spot to give those, oh, these are the things that I really need to tell the referee to work on in the future, and some did. And yeah, so in terms of what's good, we have kind of talked about that, but yeah, it's more about just that using the opportunity to teach everyone about it and get everyone on the same page, I think was probably the biggest issue.
Okay, thank you. And the third group, anything to add to what we have so far, or your discussion points in there? Was there someone from the third group? Oh, sorry, there. Awesome, thank you.
Have you got me?
Yep, gotcha.
Yeah. We didn't actually nominate a speaker, but I'll just, one thing we did spend a bit of time on was the its use and the difference between using it with an experienced referee and a new or less experienced referee.
Okay.
The conversations need to be different.
Okay. So maybe it's a point, so different conversations for. Okay. And that's around, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that at all?
Well, yeah, we're not expecting a new referee to be too analytical, I guess would be the way. And so you need to, what you might be able to cover off with an experienced referee, you need to break it down into probably several steps with a less experienced referee. You can still have the conversation, but keep it simple. Don't flood them.
While Cam's typing, Graham, does the framework remain relevant for a new referee, a first-year referee?
I think it does. It's not a complicated framework, but it's a newer referee simply because they haven't got the on the field as much on the field experience. Has more difficulty probably analysing their own performance, and you just need to make it a little bit easier for them. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the issue here, is that this was designed for probably elite level referees, the national squads, etc., and then it was pushed quite rightly down into community rugby, but with probably a focus on premier referees and panel B. Where we are trying to encourage the referees at those levels, particularly at premier referees, to manage their self-assessment process rather than, be told to do it, as perhaps we might have been done in the old days, and that was certainly the way I was coached. As Sam mentioned earlier, one of the issues inevitably in this is which end of the coaching continuum are you at, and typically at early stage in the panel B, C, and D, they're probably at the left-hand side, where teaching rather more than self-assessment is probably the norm. And by the time we get up to the our top five referees, it should be much more self-assessment driven, with the ability for us to coach and provide input as they need, or we might deem they need, having watched them on a weekend, and perhaps there was a facet of their refereeing which was incorrect for that day, and they need to work on remedy, and it might have been around tackle ball or whatever, you know. So it's tough using this for early stage referees, and I think one of the things we looked at was a different form came last year. I know when Pat was doing it, that was easier for us to work with the earlier stage referees rather than using the Grow model for the higher level referees.
I think there's certainly, I think the way in which you integrate or adapt it, I think for me, and we'll get into obviously this throughout these modules more and more and more as we uncover this, is that yeah, like how Graham was saying, there's no reason we can't use this model. The keys in the conversation, you know, and not necessarily on the form. And I think the form, if it's a barrier, then we've got issues, and we need to fix that. The keys in the conversation, and that's how can we adapt our questioning. So
I think, yeah. Sorry.
No, carry on.
I think,
yeah.
I think what I did with the new referees, I didn't use the form with them per se. I mean, you'd find out what they were sort of trying to do in that, and then when I generated a conversation by after a game, then going out just with an email or even before, just with a few bullet points, certainly around what our Grow form is, but not, you know, not our form. And I got some good responses from some of the referees.
Yeah, this actually dovetails quite nicely into our next little part of this module. So we've got one more breakout session and then reflection. So let me just share this with you here. All right, so this actually goes into this little bit. We talked about, I guess, those levels of what those conversations could look like, but actually now let's just think a bit about where we've been in the past with what we've had with coaching. But also there, you know, where there is a place for assessing as well. So what we're going to do right now is within your groups again, and again I'll give you around about 7 or 8 minutes, and then we'll come back in and then reflect and wrap up. Is create a list of words to describe each of these. So a list of words to describe assessing and a list of words to describe coaching. We're looking for lists of words, not necessarily big long sentences and war and peace. So some keywords that would describe each of those two things. Thanks for the discussion there, guys. Just looking, sorry, not too sure the video just clicked off while we were typing these lists up here, but just rounding back on your feedback here, guys. So we've got our 2 lists looking at assessing. We've got a right and wrong, but negative approach can be demoralizing. It's focusing on grading, observing, reviewing, your comparison, often finding and searching for things, type of evaluation based on criteria, and it can be criticism. Coaching, we're looking at challenging the person, positive, looking on improvement, referee driven, helpful, encouraging, looking outside the square, listening, relationships, adapting to the person, engagement, inspiring, connecting with them, focusing on a change of behavior, and an element of trust with that as well. So just looking at the differences between these 2 as well. Now that we've got these 2 lists, do we have anything else, you know, I guess when comparing between assessing and coaching, do you have anything else to say about that, or any opportunities to share our thoughts around differences between the 2 of them?
Like for me, just talking from my experience as a first year referee last year, there's a degree of assessing. Right at the beginning, you're being assessed on whatever skills you have, strengths, and then finding what those improvements are, which put me in a very sort of uncomfortable space because of being questioned and critiqued in some way, but it was about that whole process of growing. And so Roy, I agree with Roy in terms of it has to be 2 different roles, but maybe on the coaching spectrum that assessment part would be like a whole new, well, a separation to the coaching, but a part of, so it's a different, like it's a process into helping new referees get into refereeing, or if that makes sense.
that makes sense. So from what I'm hearing you say is that a coach's role or whatever part of your development is that you more need some part of assessing built into that at some points along the way. Is that what you're saying? Or...
Yeah, and that creates a platform of growth or foundation to work from.
Okay.
So I tend to, in that situation, I tend to use the word instructional rather than assessing. Because we're trying to get a balance between helping a first-year referee and evaluating what they need to work on. It might be positioning one day. We've talked to Sean at half time sometimes and said, why don't you just work on this in the second half? And that to me is instructional. It's not about assessment. It's just trying to, more directional instruction than perhaps self-reflection, if you know what I mean, the distinction.
Okay.
I think assessment comes more, I think we should be getting rid of that word because it goes way back, and I think we've all got horrible memories of assessment, some of us older referees. Assessment now, I believe, is more about selection and the game reviewing selection, where you've got people out there which most of you, we get higher up, you're selecting referees for different honours, different grades, New Zealand or whatever. So they do have to have a little bit of assessment on their whole game, but that's mainly covered in a game plan thing. So yeah, assessing, I think if we're talking about coaching alone, we should be just staying well away from assessing and just coaching and helping the referee.
I'm just going to share with what was on our thanks for this, so from MZR, what they had on their PowerPoint as well. So just making sure we kind of hit the mark there. So we had our own list as well, but I guess some preconceived ideas of assessing and coaching. So yeah, really looking at that difference between the two of them. And from what I'm hearing from you guys as well is that the coaching really is around developing the person, interacting with them, that relationship, that communication. The assessing is really objective, like it's really just black and white. Here's what you've done wrong, here's what you need to do next. Okay guys, so just looking lastly before we wrap up, so just looking at our coaching, so really moving, not focusing on that assessing side part of things, but just looking at coaching, really what we're looking to be taking out of this, out of our grow conversations in our grow structure. So really looking at that questioning, that's a key part of that conversation. The observing and the gaining evidence, that's what the role of the coaches need to do, along with in conjunction with the referee as well. Looking for our coaches to be listening and note taking, paraphrasing, being reactive in that to what the referee is saying. Really listening, that's the key thing. I'd go as far as adding active listening in there, which is that key skill for our coaches. The feedback and feed forward, again, within the structure of the grow model, focusing on those goals. What is that targeted feedback and feed forward? Really connecting and understanding, so it's getting to know, that's that relationship side of things as well. Knowing each other, knowing the referee, knowing what the focus is there as well. Just honing down, so keeping it uncluttered, removing interference, building confidence, just focusing on the critical few things. So removing you can look at a million different things within a game, within a season, whatever, but we just hone down to those critical few things. And then the setting actions for the ref to go and do, that's just not from the coach, but that's with the referee, that's hand in hand. So how do those actions come about? It's not a one-way thing, it's a conversation. Again, this is really just summing it up. I think, the little actions that we can see more of within our grow conversations, our grow structure, and within our relationships, really. And that's our key relationships, again, is what we build between our referees and our coaches. And again, we see that right there, building relationships outside of the game. Just how do we work together? How do we know each other? How do we like to get in touch, receive information, have conversations? It's not everyone's the same. And so that's where those relationships will help to establish that. And in fact, into all that is the communication, the listening, the questioning, celebrations of things. You can celebrate those things together, and then the stronger that relationship is, the bigger and better that celebration is. Nice and simple. The clarity is key, but also being prepared to have the hard conversations, and that stems out of the relationships. You build that relationship. Those hard conversations can happen in a much safer environment. Again, that's that agreed plan that's coming together and saying, I'm going to do this, you're going to do this. Let's make sure we're upholding our end of the bargain as well. The feed forward approach, again, focusing on what we can do and how we can change things, and then being so that we can be reflective on the bad days and or disappointing game, and know that we can learn the most from those, and actually just your actions, our actions speak louder than words sometimes, and that's just through being punctual and being onto it and being proactive and being organised for the other person as well. Okay, so a few C's in there. The coaching, it's all about the caring, connecting, communicating, some clarity. That's those I guess those C's to focus on for our module. Cool. Okay, guys. Look, thanks for joining us again. We'll look to keep these relatively short and sweet today. So probably ran about 10 minutes longer than what we're hoping, but again, there was a bit of Zoom how-to and whatnot in the midst of it, and just getting used to the platform. I'll look forward to. We're going to be. There's also I think Paul's also joining the Auckland referees chat on Wednesday night. So if you can catch that, I think it's all around grow. Could be useful. Again, it's if you can, you can. You can't, you can't. Just check out the details on our calendar on Auckland Rugby referees website for that one as well. So. If there's anything else, guys, any questions or comments or to finish off with?
Yeah.
Cool. I really appreciate you giving up your time. Really do. And I'll catch you next time.
Have a good week.
Thanks, man.
Yes.
See you.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Keep
Hey, all.
up.